This is Dennis Raimondi with the Coffee League, where we discuss all things coffee. We're recording this November 15th, 2020. Maybe when you'll listen to this interview, life on the planet will be better, but we're in the middle of a COVID uptick. I'm in Iowa in the Midwest, where we're sort of the epicenter of that. So crazy time, and hopefully, and I'm very hopeful now that things will get better. Coffee, even a bigger part of my life now, because I have my 3 cups a day, and in many days going through all this, it's the best part of the day. In any event, I got a great guest today, Natalie Webb and Erika Rincón. They're both out in California, and they have an organization, Cafe Cita. They work with women coffee, women underrepresented in terms of ownership of farms. Much of the labor is done by women, but it's a male-controlled industry, and they're trying to do something about that. And we as listeners, if we hear what they're saying, can, I'm sure, support what they're doing. They set it up as a nonprofit, and I'm thrilled to have them on today. Thank you so very much, Natalie, Erika, and let's begin by asking you, I know you both have extensive backgrounds in working in the areas of social justice, even before you work with Women in Coffee. But tell us a little bit about how this organization came into being.
Sure, absolutely. Well, first, thank you so much for having us on, Dennis. It's really great to talk and chat about coffee. So this is Natalie speaking, and as you said, both of us have been working in the social justice world for a long time. I was actually a human rights lawyer before starting Cafe Cita and moving into the coffee world. But one of the aspects that I really wanted to focus on with starting Cafe Cita is, as you said, working specifically with women coffee producers, because I saw that, up to 70% of labor on coffee farms is done by women. And yet the ownership is much lower than that. It could be as low as, 5 to 20%. So you have this very unequal setup already. And then the women coffee producers that actually do own the coffee farms, a lot of them are receiving a lot less revenue for their coffee. So I just saw that there was a huge need that really had to be addressed. So that's really where the idea came from. And the other aspect, like you said, it is going to be a self-sustaining nonprofit one day, but I wanted it to be exactly that. I wanted it to be both a business and a nonprofit, so it wasn't reliant just on grants and finding funders and more of a traditional nonprofit. I really wanted to focus on the empowerment by actually, buying the products from the women and also donating a percentage of the revenue back to the women producers and to other women nonprofits around the world.
Interesting. And later on in the interview, I want to talk about your buying the coffee and how it's distributed, how you bring in funding so that people listening in, including me, can help in any way they can. This interest, you went from both of you from social services, social justice into coffee. Why coffee? What made you focus on coffee? Did you have a love for coffee? Did you have family members in the industry, or what made you focus on this particular industry?
It was a love for coffee. I really was, when I was, there's this trying to decide on the business model and looking at something that is something that I love, but also is so loved by the world. Coffee is just up there. It's been a huge industry. It's $225 billion in the U.S. industry, and it's continuing to grow. And it's also an amazing area just because there has been such a focus on having sustainable coffee, looking at, the relationships. And it's an area that both had a need for focusing on the women, but already had a huge customer base that really, cared about who the producers are and really wanted that organic, direct trade model. So it was a combination of me loving coffee, drinking coffee every day, becoming more interested in coffee, seeing it through my travels, like how it's grown. And then also just seeing, what the market is in the U.S. right now.
Mm-hmm. And then once you have made a decision, first of all, how did you and Natalie and Erika, how did you guys hook up? And how did you hook up with the other board members on your organization, Cafecita? And I assume, as I looked, I think it's all women. Were these all women? Were any of them involved in coffee already? And then when you started out, you have an idea. How did you put it into, how did you start manifesting it? What were your first steps? So a couple of questions there. Yeah.
Yeah, so Natalie and I actually met, we met a long time ago through a mutual friend that we had, but really got to connect, kind of reconnect, I guess, several years ago in Mexico. We were going to our friend's wedding down there. And so that's sort of how we met and became really close friends. And I would say definitely, what all of us on the board share in common is this background, work background and commitment towards social justice. But in terms of coffee, like for myself, I actually really got involved in coffee at a young age in my life, started drinking it at a young age. And some of my first job experiences were working in cafes and really learning how to make different coffee drinks, how to be a barista, but learning about coffee beans and, how to really describe all the different varieties out there and, really become a lot more knowledgeable about coffee. And then I actually got into espresso catering, and that was really, really exciting and fun, and sort of bringing espresso and high quality coffee to so many different types of places and events. And anyway, so I have always loved coffee and started drinking it at a young age, and really appreciated, I think, too, the ways that just how you drink it in different places in different countries. And it was when I spent time in Italy, I really adapted to how they were drinking coffee
Right.
there. And then when I was in Venezuela, I really loved the coffee there. So it's always been a big part of my life, and I was really excited when Natalie decided to start this venture.
And then,
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to answer your other questions
Right.
about the other board members. As Erika mentioned, everyone comes from a social justice background, which I love. Like, there's this deep commitment with
Mm-hmm.
all the women on the board, about community, about working together, about collaboration. But then at the same time, everyone has a completely different background. Like, they all bring something different to the table. And that's something I really wanted. I wanted, like, different voices. I wanted, there's lawyers and interpreters and graphic designers that have, like, these different viewpoints on the world, to bring that into Cafecita. And the other aspect that everyone has in common is everyone's a big traveler. Like, everyone kind of has this mindset about being part of the global economy, being interconnected, and that's something I really want represented in Cafecita.
Yeah. Where are some of the farms that you're dealing with now? What countries?
So currently we're working with 3 co-ops. One is in Honduras, one is in Mexico, and one is in Rwanda.
And is there significant difference with what you're dealing with in those 3 countries, or is it relatively the same? And when you first got into those countries, did you have a specific contact, or how did you get things going on the ground? So first question, the similarities or differences between the countries, and then who are your field marshals or people that are on the ground there, and what are their responsibilities?
So it's great. We work with a coffee importer, Sustainable Harvest. They're based in Portland, and I love them. I can't say enough great things about them. So their whole model is relationships, right? Relationship coffee.
Right.
They're actually the ones who connected us to the co-ops that we work with.
Mm-hmm.
So they do most of the legwork. I mean, we've really worked with them, and they've already, they are always like meeting with the producers, making sure that workers' rights are protected, that there's gender equality at every stage of production, that, all the principles that we share, like, Cafecita's mission as well, are actually being implemented. So we were very lucky in that sense that our contact is Sustainable Harvest, and then they're the ones that actually are on the ground.
Oh, okay, so those co-ops that you're working with in those countries, were they women run? Were they run by women rather, and or is that something that Sustainable Harvest helped you organize with you? How did that go?
So Sustainable Harvest doesn't have a specific program based on women, which is really, when I was looking at all the importers, I really did so much research. And initially I was like, oh, well, they don't have this program. But I loved, even just their name. Like, they're so environmentally sustainable. They're really based on the relationships. So I wanted to work with them. So I reached out, and it turns out that even though they don't have a specific women's program, they do work with these women-owned co-ops. So the 3 co-ops that we work with are completely women-owned. So that's how that works out.
And so then for Natalie or Erika, either one could touch upon this. So like Sustainable Harvest, who do they distribute to? Or in other words, these co-ops that you're working with in these 3 countries, if somebody says, okay, I want to support that, I want to purchase beans that come from them, who do they, are there retailers, are there brands in the U.S. that they can buy that would help what you're doing and support women in coffee?
Yeah, so Cafecita, actually. So they don't do retail, right? They only import the coffee. They're kind of like the middleman between the actual farms and the retail, and we're the retail. So actually, not only to like buying Cafecita coffee, which is the whole.
Where can I find Cafecita? I travel a lot, although I'm limited right now. But if I'm going in Chicago, New York, anywhere. Where might I find Cafecita coffee?
Well, that's actually a great question, because we are opening our online store tomorrow. So you can just order it online, and we ship all over the U.S.
Oh, fantastic. So that's cafecitacoffee.com. I'll have all that posted up. And so in other words, and this is great, because what people are doing now, including me, is going online and ordering my coffee beans. And so it doesn't matter where you are. And it'll be online, and then the monies that come in to Cafecita, how are those monies used?
So also an excellent question. So not only is purchasing the coffee empowering the women producers, but actually a percentage of our profits go to women's nonprofits around the world. So the way it's set up is that some of it goes. Sustainable Harvest, the importer, also has a nonprofit connected to them that's called Sustainable Growers. And they specifically work with coffee producers to, especially with women, to make sure that they have equal resources and access to the market, so that they're actually making as much money on their coffee and being able to enter the market and have more empowerment and have more leadership in the industry. So that's one of the nonprofits that will receive a percentage of the profits. And then the other one will always be changing, but currently we're working with an organization based in Oaxaca, Mexico, called Envia. And they work also with the women artisans around Oaxaca in the villages to have them, also empowering them to set up their own businesses through no interest microloans and through business training. And then they also have a responsible tourism, which is actually where they make the money from normally, besides their Cafecita donations. But they'll take tourists out to learn how, all of these traditional arts are being made. And then the money that they make from those tours are what is used for the microloans. And so the women can continue to grow their businesses.
Right.
So they're an amazing organization. I actually was really inspired. I spent 6 months in Mexico and Oaxaca last year and really got to know the organization. And that's one of the inspirations about how I want Cafecita to be set up with being a sustainable nonprofit was based on what I saw in India.
What are some of your biggest challenges in Honduras, in Rwanda, in Mexico, in the countries that you're dealing? Is it cooperative? Is there resistance from people in the industry that control a lot of the farmlands and all? How is it on the ground there? What's working, and what are some of your obstacles?
Well, really, as you can imagine right now, it's COVID. It's really hard. It's slowed down everything.
Right.
And, you have to make sure that the workers are really being protected and being safe and not putting themselves in, dangerous situations, which, it's really tricky. So I would definitely say that's the biggest obstacle at the moment. And in the farms... go ahead. Sorry. I was going to say, generally, one of the biggest issues with women producers, though, is also land ownership. Right. Because a lot of times women don't own the land, right, in a lot of these countries. And that restricts their ability to get financing and, really able to kind of grow the farms. So that's a huge obstacle that, Cafecita really wants to address, is making sure that women have the land ownership. Right. And my understanding is that if it's a husband and wife that own a farm and the husband dies, the land doesn't necessarily go to the wife. Is that right? That's been an issue. Often. Tell us about that. Depends on the situation, but that's often how it is, and so that's why these women own farms or coffee farms already, which there's not that many of them, but the ones that they do have, they're really restricted in so many ways, because then a lot of times it falls on the women to do the domestic tasks, but also to be running the farm. They don't get the same resources. There's a lot of bias about, when there is help for coffee producers, a lot of times they'll go to male-owned coffee farms. And so it's just, and it's the same with accessing the marketplaces. So, there's definitely a lot of obstacles for the women producers. Okay, and then, so am I correct that you said before that you're launching the sale of your products online tomorrow? Is that? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So very auspicious. On the website, cafecitacoffee.com. And we're also going to set up to our Instagram, which is also just Cafecita Coffee. You'll be able to do Instagram shopping. So if anybody's on that, it's really easy just to click on the product. But the first place to go, and by the time people hear this, you'll be online, is cafecitacoffee.com. Is that right? Exactly. And then you can always contact us here, or me here. Right now it's me, and I can get you that information. And then where do you see this going in the next 3, 4, 5 years, assuming COVID gets contained, that we get back to whatever the new normal is in the next couple of months? Where would you like to see this headed? Well, the original idea was to be a cafe. Actually, that's what I really wanted, because I love cafes. I love cafe culture. I love the community aspect that it creates. And all around the world, like Erika was saying, seeing that, I think it's just really beautiful. And so I still hope that one day we can actually open a physical location in Los Angeles. That's the ultimate plan. Really, then, COVID came right as the idea was forming and as everything was kind of launching. And so we had to pivot to e-commerce, which I still think is great and is new to learn and to adjust to that. But I do hope to be able to have a cafe. Right on the ground. Well, I think go ahead.
And if I could add on to that I think too, the exciting part about possibly one day, having an actual brick and mortar store is the idea of having it really be like a multi-use space where there's opportunities to really support local communities and bring local artists together and just, be really creative about how that can actually be an added benefit in the community and provide a really cool, different kind of space I think also there's, we've had ideas around, really trying to create more of a social enterprise that actually provides, economic opportunities to workers and, supporting good local jobs and just really trying to think outside the box.
Right.
So, yeah, that's
No,
sort of the direction
I think that's wonderful. I mean, I think everybody that loves coffee, including me, my thought was always, I'll open a cafe, but then I'm involved, and it would be very time consuming. And so, but I think ultimately, if I could do anything in coffee, would be just right there, a cafe with, and of course, that the culture that surrounds coffee. I spend a lot of time in Scandinavia, and I probably visit 500 plus cafes a year. And it's amazing. I mean, how different it is, how similar it is, and what an influence it could have. And you mentioned affecting the community. There's a Truth Coffee in Cape Town, South Africa is where they're based. I think it's David Dundee owns it. And what they've done there is he started a barista school. Virtually everybody that goes to the barista school comes from the townships where the unemployment is, 60-70% often, and they get men and women baristas that they train, placed in jobs, and it's been incredible. And I think one of the baristas they trained recently won the for South Africa, went to the international competition. So I think you could have all kinds of impact on community and in the area, and a connection like with you guys both have amazing, extensive backgrounds in social justice, and I'm sure that will actually doing what you're doing with Women in Coffee is part of that. But I think there's many angles you could take, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's
definitely. Yeah. And our backgrounds too, what's great is so my background is in city planning, public health, so that's really looking at alternative models to local community economic development. It's really, I think we all bring so many different things. And then of course there's a lot of artists, in the board too. So it's exciting.
Great. And then, so once you launch and get that end of it going, do either of you do both of you travel to Honduras when things open up, when one can travel, Rwanda and Mexico? Do you actually go on the ground and visit and connect with them there? I know you spent 6 months in Mexico, but will that be something you'll continue to do?
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait. That's really, the whole model is really focused so much on the coffee producers. And so, it feels very restricted right now that, we're not able to go and actually meet them and talk to them and work on the ground. It's just kind of put a hold to that. But that's going to be a huge part of Cafecita, and not just the 3 that we have, but to continue to kind of meet these women producers around the world.
Right. And have you gotten any support, or have you stimulated any interest among some of the kind of more powerful forces in the world of coffee? Some of the big Stumptown, Blue Bottle, the La Colombe, the real they're very powerful, and they have a lot of resources. Have you gotten any interest from anyone in the industry like that?
No, we're just launching this year, and so we're still very new. And I just the board is I just love the board so much, and we're all very invested in growing Cafecita in our vision. And so I think at least initially we really kind of want to get off the ground, make sure that everything's being done the way that we want things to go, and then potentially down the line, maybe make those connections. But that is not the plan at all.
So again, November 16th, 2020 will be when you launch your online project or products, Cafecita, and people will actually be able to buy and support what you're doing there. And I'm sure it's going to be very high quality coffee. let's get people to that site. So again, contact me, contact them. How can they get a hold of you? What's the best way? If anybody has any interests or ideas or that they'd like to share with you, what's the best way they can contact you guys?
Through the website is the best. We have, you can contact through there, and this is Natalie, I'll receive those emails and we'll definitely respond as soon as possible. And the other thing I was going to say about, so the shop will be at cafecita.com, but it's also, the website is really good because we have a whole bunch of resources about women in coffee and, all the academic studies that have been shown, about what's happening in the coffee industry in regards to gender equality. And then also you can meet the producers. We have a whole page focused solely on the producers. So let's say you're buying the coffee from Rwanda, you can actually see the co-op in Rwanda and you can see their whole history and their whole story and what they're about. So it's a good website to kind of get all of that information.
Great.
Yeah, just to reiterate, it's cafecitacoffee.com.
Okay, and I'll have that posted up when we post up the podcast. And again, it's November 15, 2020. Many of you will be listening to this, all of you, sometime in the future. And so everything will be up and running, and hopefully the world will be a little bit more normal by then. So Natalie, Erika, thank you so very much for your time. And if anybody has any ideas they'd like to share with them, you can contact them directly or contact me, and I'll get that off to you. And again, I'm looking forward to ordering from your site. I may be one of your first customers. So wishing you guys great success.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.